Good evening. You're watching or listening to Redwood Wonk. I am with Dr. Aaron Donaldson once again for the second week in a row. And my name is Eric Kirk. We are talking national news of the day. Hot off the press, it looks like Donald Trump is under criminal investigation, according to The Independent, under the Espionage Act, but also for obstruction. We don't have a whole lot of details, but over the past couple of days, former President Donald Trump has been writing, well, at least one post on his Truth Network, in all caps, complaining that he's being prosecuted when he's done nothing wrong. Why isn't Clinton being prosecuted for delete emails? Why isn't Biden being prosecuted? And this is the biggest witch hunt ever. It's been it's formal. It is formalized. We don't know if he's being prosecuted, but we do know that there is testimony before a grand jury. So the grand jury, I believe, at least one grand jury is in South Florida. Where Mar-a-Lago is, of course, where the documents were located, and which is kind of interesting itself, because that, of course, is where a jury would be less gung-ho about prosecuting than perhaps in D.C., but that is where the documents were located. There's so much to unfold here. Aaron, where would you like to go with this?
Well, what I think is really interesting is basically just how this is rolling out, and comparing it to his previous indictments and the previous examples and moments where Donald Trump has been caught on tape saying things he shouldn't. You got to remember, last week they reported that there seems to be a tape of Donald Trump admitting that he has classified documents about a potential war situation between the United States and Iran. And in this tape, he is saying that these documents are classified, which totally undercuts his argument that he can blink his eyes or click his heels or wish 3 times and then just things magically become unclassified. That has been his primary defense up until this point. So people have been saying he's been caught on the Access Hollywood tapes saying scandalous stuff before, and that was in theory supposed to change the minds of the Republican electorate, and the people that support him were supposed to hear that tape and say, geez, this guy is not fit to be president. Maybe I won't vote for him. Well, that's not what happened there, as we all know. So maybe tapes aren't quite the bombshell that everyone says they are. But in this case, he is in fact under criminal indictment. And what that means is, if you are a defendant in such circumstances, and on the one hand you're saying I can blink my eyes and classify this stuff and I did that, and on the other hand we have you on tape saying I know that this stuff is classified, and then in addition to that, right now what we're seeing is people speculating that Mark Meadows might have flipped. He's been real quiet for a really, really long time. People think he's going to be pleading guilty in order to get some lesser charges. There's also a 50-page report from Donald Trump's lawyers where they're telling him he's got to give everything he has away. So he can't really say that he could keep it anymore. His defense is evaporating in front of our eyes. It could be a week while they continue to hear all of the witnesses and things that they have, and the list is getting long of people they're listening to. But everything that I'm looking at says that this could be a very meaningful indictment that could result in Donald Trump being in jail by the time the election happens. And that's not a huge surprise to a lot of people that know the way the law is supposed to work. But for this guy, it's significant because he's avoided accountability for so long.
Well, Politico is saying that the decision could be days, if not hours, away.
Right.
And people are saying that this is all very much. This has been an hour since this is.
I've been refreshing every single newspaper that I follow 8 times a day. I'm kind of a junkie.
And people are saying that yes, while the letter doesn't mean that necessarily he's going to be charged, they usually don't waste their time sending a letter like that when they aren't going to charge.
There's absolutely no benefit to sending that letter unless you're absolutely going to follow up.
Right, and people who have been testifying in front of the grand jury, Evan Corcoran, Taylor Budowich, which was a former Trump spokesperson. Evan Corcoran is a former attorney of his.
Right.
I don't know what's going on there in terms of attorney-client privilege or not. The other aspects of the story are that it may not just be Trump who was charged. There
Right.
may be other people in the circles, but there may be other quote unquote target letters being sent around. The one that's getting the news is the one to Trump, of course, and not only are they sending this letter, but obviously they've released it to the press.
Right.
So it's this is wild. This is also now in a forum. Of course, a lot of Trump's defenders are saying, "Oh, yet another attempt to get him. You're all going to be disappointed." But this isn't a forum where Mitch McConnell can defend him by making sure that 41 senators don't vote guilty. This is not. He's out of that forum. Really curious about if this is an espionage act. We knew about the obstruction. We saw it. They had to raid his place after months of negotiating, of trying to play nice. So we knew about that, but espionage. I mean, what's the story there? And we can only really speculate. You brought up the Iran situation. There have been speculation of other things, but the nuclear capabilities of a particular country, friend or foe, we don't know. I mean, it's just and how much will we learn about this, and how much can they even deal with if it is quote unquote top secret, classified, or whatever. This is just such a bizarre situation. It's really hard to know what to make of it, and we're really at the embryonic stages here. But this is not a Friday afternoon dump. This is something. There is an intention here. Jack Smith has a purpose for this news dump in the middle of the week, Hump Day. Right? I mean, This is Wednesday. This is not something they're going to dump on Friday and maybe have a little bit of talk on Sunday morning shows. There's a couple of more days of news cycles on this. We were going to talk about those pending because we already knew about the grand jury and Trump's frantic postings and the rest. The rest of the Republicans are silent. Pence is it just declared today, said that January 6th is disqualifying, but DeSantis is already in the race, but he's sliding. He's sliding fast in the polls, so I think the others are all helping. The governor of North or South Dakota, I forget his name, nobody even knows him, has just declared. So we've got a crowded race. Does Trump leave the race? I don't know. That's the only thing that's kind of protecting him right now. So until he's actually convicted, I don't think he has to leave the race. I'm not even sure he has to leave the race if he's convicted. You can
Probably
be elected even if you can't hold the office. I mean, Eugene Debs campaigned from jail. It's only certain things that keep you out if you're convicted of espionage or something, not espionage, but insurrection in the 14th Amendment. And that's not a charge here.
No, this is unique for a lot of reasons. I think, just kind of circling back to the laundry list of Trump's former counsel and folks that are coming forward. I think what's interesting is that, this is not on par with Pence. This is not on par with Biden. This is he can what about all he wants. But the fact of the matter is this president insisted he had given everything back when he did, in fact, not give 15 boxes back. And then they literally had to break the door down in order to get this stuff back. And that's weird because he was telling his own lawyers that he had given pretty much everything back and insisting to his own lawyers that he could keep everything. And what that does is that potentially involves them in a criminal act, and so they are required to keep notes and things like that. And two courts, an appellate court as well as the primary court, found that the risk that they were involved in a criminal act was sufficient enough to overturn that attorney-client privilege. This is an extreme move, and it happened at two levels within our court system. And what it has found, not only like just really bolstered that, obstruction charge, but also I think really emphasized, like, again, like you were saying, like what else is going on here? Like, where is this information going? We're talking potentially nuclear information. We're talking potentially war plans. It could be the most banal thing in the world, but if it says like classified because of national security, it's because if that falls into the hands of our enemies, it's bad, and we don't want that to happen. And the question is whether or not Republicans, we know that they will elect a man who says that we should grab women by whatever in public because you're a celebrity. That's electable material for Republicans. The question is if he is sitting in jail because he has like kept this information, obstructed justice, and potentially been found guilty of some kind of espionage, will they still vote for him? I have another prediction that I'm really excited about this week, so this isn't it. But it's possible they don't. It's possible that, like, overnight his approval rating just evaporates. That would turn this election into a real rodeo. Pretty much all Biden has going for him is that he's not Donald Trump. And if Donald Trump's not running for president, Biden has absolutely nothing to campaign on. And this could lead to a real wild show. I don't know.
Well, we'll see if he has nothing to campaign on. Actually, the border, since Title 42 ended and he's implementing his own policy, I'm not a fan of that policy, but border crossings have declined 70% over the past 4 weeks. So he does there. It may be that within the next month there isn't a border crisis to the degree that it was. If inflation tames, if there is success in the Ukraine war, he may have stuff to campaign on. We're sort of like, he's at a low point right now, but he may not need Trump in another 6 months or so. But we don't know. We just don't know. He's not popular right now. Afghanistan is like the biggest thing that's kind of set him down in the approval ratings, but that's going to get more and more distant soon. So does he need Trump? I don't know, but it certainly is. That's what got him elected the first time, and that's what he's kind of counting on right now. But Trump is not going to drop out. No. So the question is will he sink to the point where somebody else like DeSantis or Tim Scott, probably not Tim Scott, but or Hutchinson. I mean, personally, I think Hutchinson of all the candidates who've declared, is the most dangerous to Biden or to any Democrat in the general. But he's probably also one of the most least likely to win the nomination. The very characteristics that make him the most dangerous in the general are the ones that disqualify him in the primaries. He's too much of an intellectual, for one thing. But does this change the dynamics of the Republican race? Is this going to galvanize Republicans? Are they going to see it as a witch hunt? How is this going to play with independents? Half independents believe that Biden's age is an issue, not necessarily a disqualifying issue, but a legitimate issue of concern. It's something he has to be concerned about. Trump isn't all that much younger than Biden, by the way. That's something that we don't think about, but it is. And how do the Republicans handle this? I mean, I've been scanning through the articles since we started this, and I'm not finding any Republican comment.
No,
can't
there's
be
not
reached
much
for
they can
comment.
say.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
One of the things about this that's important is that when it comes to like him being convicted of sexually assaulting folks or attacking folks or things like that, Republicans can look the other way because in theory they can say that doesn't affect them. When it comes to like keeping documents that have like national security significance, there can't be no accountability for this, because if you like have no accountability for keeping these kinds of documents, that can create real problems in the future. Like, we need that precedent to be set now for people that are in power now, so that folks like Joe Joe Biden. No, they can't just pocket this stuff and go, home. And I think that what's really meaningfully different here is Republicans can't come out on the wrong side of this one because it does affect national security. And, January 6th, they can call that legitimate public discourse. That's another raft of potential indictments that could be coming along sometime soon that could do real damage to Trump. But that to them is like legitimate public discourse, whereas this is pretty extravagant, pretty significant. It's a precedent that needs to be upheld. I don't know how it plays with the base. I do know I saw a poll somewhere that said something like 2/3 of Americans are interested in voting for a third-party candidate. And something that I think is worth noting is that Donald Trump appeared out of nowhere, and he can go back to nowhere tomorrow because the base is not really I know it seems like there's a cult of personality here, but literally Donald Trump was not a person in the Republican base until 2016. That's when that started, right? He was on Home Alone 2. That's what he was doing, and The Apprentice and stuff.
Sure.
So this guy is currently captivating the base, but they could turn on him for anybody. And part of what's interesting to me is it could be a name we have not heard of. Again, I think this could be a real rodeo. But just coming back to this one, personally, I think we could see some indictments by the end of the week. That's what I'm expecting because, like you said, this came out on a Wednesday. So I feel like the news will drop by the end of this week. If not early next week, we're going to get some real bombshell stuff. And then they're going to have to say something. Mitch McConnell can stay mum right now, but when the actual indictments and things start rolling out, he's going to have to start talking.
Well, Mitch McConnell could say, I will let the investigation, play out, or I will let the charges play out and let the process, decide. That's what he did with the January 6th. We'll find out, what it is. It's just you can stay neutral and respect the process and respect the system. Well, an exciting moment. Where it goes, who knows?
I, Richard Billhouse Nixon, do solemnly swear.
I, Gerald R. Ford, do solemnly swear.
I, Jimmy Carter, do solemnly swear.
I, Ronald Reagan, do solemnly swear.
I, George Herbert Walker Bush, do solemnly swear.
I, William Jefferson Clinton, do solemnly swear.
I, George Walker Bush, do solemnly swear.
I, Barack Hussein Obama, do solemnly swear.
I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear.
I, Joseph Robinette Biden Jr., do solemnly swear. So help me God.
All right. Well, maybe one of the reasons we're not hearing a lot of Republican comments is because they've got their hands full. Democrats are just kind of taking a back seat. I'm surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if they don't have popcorn out right now, because since the debt ceiling deal passed last week, the right wing of the Republican Party has gone, bat guano crazy. They are really upset with that deal for reasons you and I discussed last week. Now, it's not a good deal for Democrats. It's not a good deal for America, as far as I'm concerned. But it's a good deal in the sense that it should have been a lot worse. Biden should really should play up with his base that this is probably guaranteeing that it's not going to get much worse with the budget discussions later on, because the Republicans are kind of locked in here. And not only that, there may not be much of an increase in the military budget, right? I mean, this is they've done their thing here. They can't then now threaten to shut down the government at that. They can only go to that well so many times, and they've got an election year coming up. They really don't want to look like they're just babies throwing tantrums when the Democrats have supposedly given them what they want, and now the Freedom Caucus, it really looks like that. And there's a bunch of bills, that like 4 bills that the Republicans were supposed to pass, that some of the members of the Freedom Caucus are holding up by not allowing procedural votes to let them go through. And these are crazy right-wing bills, some of them. Like one of them, a bill that is wacko. It's intended to guarantee the right to a gas stove or something like that, which is a reaction to something that was never going to happen anyway. And so McCarthy probably didn't want to spend a lot of time on it, but the Freedom Caucus people are just blocking it just as a matter of principle to block everything, but they don't even have demands because they can't even get together themselves to make demands. So they're just freezing the House from even passing these bills that not only they're not going to be passed in the Senate, they're not even going to be discussed in committee, let alone make it to the floor. So, another one was to roll back some gun control, and so they're frozen. So McCarthy, I think they just want to show that McCarthy, doesn't have power, but all they're showing is that they don't know what they're doing. It's gone into today because they don't have any demands. So McCarthy is basically asking, what do you want? And they don't have an answer. And the media is asking, what do you want? And they don't have an answer.
They can't agree. There's nothing popular amongst them that they can do to decrease the deficit. It's a problem of their own making. $8 trillion or something like that was added under the Trump administration. Nobody threatened to shut down the budget then. It's just when Biden is in the office that now all of a sudden we have to make this an issue. And one of the things I said last week is I think McCarthy is going to survive a no confidence vote. To me, the real big takeaway from all of this is that the Freedom Caucus has nothing. They have absolutely nothing. They thought that was like this big threat, this big axe that would be hanging over McCarthy's head. But we talked about how that no confidence vote could play for the Democrats. They just get to sit there on national TV and say Hakeem Jeffries 100 times over and over, like this chant for America. And maybe there's concessions involved in that the Democrats get what they want. So they know they can't do that. And so now the casualties of the budget showdown are, one, the economic uncertainty that brought us to the 0 hour of default, which could have had catastrophic economic consequences. That's one thing that happened. And also, the Save Our Gas Stoves bill went away, and this pistol brace bill went away. Now, neither of those two things are we got you. They really stuck it to McCarthy on that one. None of these are really sticking him in ways that matter. As you mentioned, these are small bills that really aren't even that popular in the party because they're predicated on just responding to the Biden administration.
Yeah.
So the first takeaway for me is that the Freedom Caucus is all bark, no bite. I think we all knew that, but we were concerned that somehow this so-called red wave that never materialized may have matriculated into some meaningful majority for them. They can just shoot themselves in the foot by hurting little tiny bills because they have no real agenda. The second takeaway to me that's really important is just look at the difference between Democrats and Republicans right now. Democrats are trying to regulate old gas stoves because they cause asthma and lead to particulate and potentially carbon monoxide poisoning and things. They're not trying to ban gas stoves. They're just saying having these things that are old in our house is maybe not good. Brace bill is a good example where this is technology used in Uvalde and all these other mass shootings. If you're disabled using a pistol brace, this law does not apply to you. But they make it about banning these things, and they make themselves the party of protecting these things. This isn't what America cares about. America wants actual substantive policy, and instead what we're getting is infighting. It's ridiculous.
And it's funny because that's what these 11 conservatives are blocking. It's not even the whole Freedom Caucus, by the way.
Right.
It's a temper tantrum. And all they're doing, they're not even really blocking the bill. They're blocking the rule votes, as they're called, to get the procedure, to get the discussion going, and they're just blocking it for no reason, or each of them might have their own reasons, but they can't agree on a collective reason for why they're doing it or what they're trying to get. It is just all they're doing is showing that they don't know what they're doing, that they're amateurs. I mean, this is just absolutely not what the Republicans wanted to be projecting right now, or any time. I mean,
they know why they're blocking it. They say they're blocking it to get back at McCarthy. That's the whole point.
Yeah.
And to me, it's like when you're mad at your roommate, you don't do something to hurt your own house because like you live in that house and you are all in it together. What you should be doing is finding ways to hurt the other people that make us mad, but instead they're like messing up their own party politics. And
Well,
I do think Democrats are sitting there eating popcorn, and that's a metaphor a lot of people are using. But remember, this is the American Congress. Like they should be working for us right now. It's tragic.
Yeah, we've got an economy that still needs work. I mean, it's the economy's a lot better than it was. There's a lot more economic optimism right now, but these people are just going to be left behind because there isn't that anger that there has been in the past. They're trying to feed on it like it's still there. And I go to these forums online, and they're like, well, there's still inflation. There's still 6% inflation. People can't afford that. And it's like, yeah, but that may not be here next time. And what are you
saving our
about?
stoves is not going to impact inflation. Sorry, no. It's just not.
No. And what this does too is it keeps that measure in the news now for 4 days, because we're going to keep talking about what these guys are blocking by not allowing the rule vote to go forward. I mean, and that's the only thing they can do. That's the closest thing to a filibuster in the House. Is not let these things go forward on it, and they could probably override it if they had help from the Democrats, but they're not going to get that. It's just there's ways they could do this, but but McCarthy. It's showing that McCarthy is an ineffective leader. It's showing that, and right now, I mean, the Democrats are probably putting together a fundraising campaign on it. This is what you've got. You're dealing with children. Bring the adults back in charge of the House. That will be their campaign.
Yeah, Matt Gaetz, I've said this for a while. To me, he looks like a novice debater. I was a debate coach for 17 years, and he looks like a guy that is all charisma, and knows the script because someone gave it to him, but he doesn't know how the process works, and he can't go 2, 3, 4, 5 rounds and, come up with a meaningful outcome. And, one thing that he said to McCarthy is that if he sides with more Democrats than Republicans in the default, then that shows where his alliances are. He's siding with the Democrats. Well, he did exactly that. That's literally how he was able to block this rule vote, was by siding with the Democrats. And so it's just really, I think convenient for folks like him, for Marjorie Taylor Greene, for Boebert, for all of these folks to be like, we're going to stick it to the party system, whenever they're not doing what we want, but they better not side with Democrats because that's like the worst thing you can possibly do. Like they literally don't even know how block politics works. Like you don't side with Democrats when you vote the same way as Democrats because like there's lots of ways that you'll vote for a resolution. And I think that they showed their own ignorance in this instance because that's what they had to do in order to really, to quote, stick it to McCarthy.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I don't think Marjorie Taylor Greene isn't in this group of 11 though, right? I don't think
but
so.
She's been I just saw her. Forbes has alarmed me at how much it's willing to platform some of this stuff with absolutely no context. And maybe I've been away from Forbes for too long, but in my mind I saw them as still like a thing and not so much anymore. They have her going on and on and on about this right now. She's a big mouthpiece for it for sure.
Yeah, Forbes. You go to their YouTube channel. It's gone all out MAGA.
It's just wild.
They used to be kind of like sort of the Wall Street sort of enlightened conservative or the upper class conservatism. No, I'm really disappointed in a lot of conservatives that used to be this. Thomas Sowell, he's gone all MAGA. I mean, he was a respected historian. I disagreed with him on a lot of stuff, but he used to have integrity. He took on, the bell curve, and he's all MAGA. But that's a whole other topic. This is where they're at, and the question is, is this going to play well to the base as the leader of the MAGA movement is about to be indicted? I mean, this is exactly the kind of thing Biden needs. This was his appeal to restore normality and calm. This plays into his hands. It's still early, and we'll see. I'd be real curious to see how those debates go. It may be that Trump doesn't even show up to the debates if Chris Christie's going to be in them. I talked about that last week. But he may need something to be able to get the attention. So I don't know. It's this is theater, but it's not really well choreographed theater, because I don't know what the end game is here. You can make your demands, or you can maybe get your demands, but if you don't even know what your demands are and to make them, there's no way you can win. So I don't know how this ends for the Republicans. The Democrats in the Senate should be putting forth stuff so that they look like they're productive.
I think that when it comes to, the follow up on like the Civil War and what happens with the Republican Party, the real question is going to be which way the electorate goes. I think if the electorate sides with folks like Gates, then it could lead to a real fracturing of the party. And I think that seems to be where it's going. Like Donald Trump introduced the grievance politics extravaganza that took Fox News's grievance politics to a whole new level. When I look at like the Wall Street Journal and things like that, and then I look at Forbes, there's a big difference in terms of where conservatism has gone. And I think where we see the base going is with the grievance politics. And so folks like Gates and folks like Boebert and all of these people, they're really good at saying the people in power don't work for America. And they say that about Democrats, and they say that about folks like McCarthy. And that's really what they're standing on right now. And so the question is, does the base care about the Save Our Gas Stoves bill and the pistol braces bill so much that they punish infighting on this particular instance? Or is it a rallying cry? And if so, that only plays towards the Democrats. I think that the establishment Republicans right now still have, in my assessment, a majority share of like the House and the way the party goes. I see more Republicans being more grown up, like the Grassleys and folks like that. Maybe not the best example, but the point is simply that if the base shows up for this, then that's going to splinter the Republicans. And it looks like theater now, but this is the stuff that they're going to feed forward into the campaigning in the future, I think.
Well, we'll move on to the next topic, but we'll probably be talking about this in the future and its after effects.
I'm very curious to see what the next meaningless bill is that gets blocked.
FBI officials confirmed that the unclassified FBI-generated record has not been disproven and is currently being used in an ongoing investigation. The confidential human source who provided information about then Vice President Biden being involved in a criminal bribery scheme is a trusted, highly credible informant who has been used by the FBI for over 10 years and has been paid over six figures. It took them a long time to admit they had the document. When he finally figured out that Senator Grassley and I both knew without a shadow of a doubt that the document existed, then they finally admitted to having the document.
This is abuse of power. This is an impeachable offense. Our FBI director, our FBI, did nothing with it. The Department of Justice did nothing with it. And do you want to know why? It's because they're protecting Joe Biden.
Okay, final topic of the night, and this is all kind of Republicans. We don't have a whole lot of news about Democrats to this week. I mean, you did bring up Cornel West, and that probably is worth some discussion at a certain point, but we are talking about Republicans versus the FBI, specifically Comer versus Wray, and potential contempt vote. Now, contempt votes of the executive don't go very well historically because the courts are loath to politically interfere, to basically to give the legislative body power over the executive. We saw this happening during the impeachment hearings. I mean, actually, where they were arguing in court, and the courts basically just did not uphold the contempt against the Trump administration. I really doubt they will do that with Wray here. But what's at stake here is Wray apparently did share this document that suggests that possibly Biden had accepted some sort of bribe. We don't know the full context of it. The Democrats are claiming that this is like a double hearsay, document that isn't worthwhile. It was shared with them for an hour and a half. Congress wants the Comer of the head of the committee and the Republicans want this document. I think they want to be able to share it with the public because they're saying that it's evidence of a crime. They want it to lead to more, and they want to know why this isn't leading to a criminal investigation. They want Ray to show up to testify. Ray is refusing to produce the document. And so they are talking about a history-making motion to hold the head of the FBI, Christopher Wray, in contempt, and this is about where we're at. The Jamie Raskin, the ranking Democrat, is basically shrugging his shoulders, saying there really isn't much here that you're talking about. But the Republicans seem to think this is a smoking gun to something. And of course, we don't really know what it is. It's just according to Comer, it's, quote, an alleged criminal scheme involving then Vice President Biden and a foreign national relating to the exchange of money for policy decisions. Aaron, what's your take on this?
Well, I think it seems to me to be more of just the, kind of ongoing effort to find something to get leading Democrat candidates and just failing. This whole House investigation into the Biden crime family feels a lot like Hillary Clinton Benghazi stuff to me. We get a lot of really, really salacious, suggested, potential stories. And then when the information comes forward, it's either not confirming what they just said, or the information does not come forward for various reasons, and then they have to backtrack and talk about why that is. In this particular instance, one thing that I do think is worth noting is that we just finished a whole segment on Republican infighting, and Ray was handpicked by Donald Trump to be the person in charge of the FBI. And typically what that would mean is that would give him some kind of credibility as maybe being not so deep statey in MAGA land. But the problem with that is it doesn't really seem to matter whether or not you are a member of the deep state. What matters is whether or not you're willing to do the things that Donald Trump wants to do. And in this case, that's investigate his political opponents. We have telephone, the perfect phone call of him trying to do this to the Prime Minister of Ukraine. And here what they're trying to do is just dig up dirt on Joe Biden. And what's meaningful to me is that Ray understands that this is so empty that it's like purely a stunt. And while he's definitely not like a liberal, he's not a Democrat, he's not a person that's going to just wade in on this kind of thing unless it's meaningful. It would have to be meaningful in order for this to come forward, because this is a sitting president we're talking about. And this is one of those moments where a lot of, conservatives are going to pull that kind of whataboutism card, because the first segment that we had is talking about why the DOJ is going after a current candidate and, in fact, the front runner for his party. And it's because the evidence is so overwhelming of obstruction and also apparently of Espionage Act violations. And so here, what's really fascinating.
And let's be real clear. The FBI's objection to producing it is that it's a confidential source, and they do not want to set a precedent of exposing a confidential source that could affect their impact in all kinds of investigations. When it's a confidential source, they allowed them to do that, and they did say that this confidential source has been known to be reliable. Jamie Raskin, the Democrat, conceded that. But this confidential source says, I don't know if the person who I heard it from is reliable. I can't vouch for that. So, we've got this, this hearsay. So they want this document. It's clear that they want it for political reasons. And I just don't see a contempt holding up in court. The Congress can do its contempt, but I want to be real clear on why the FBI is not cooperating. Ray is a cop. He is interested in doing these investigations. But anyway,
I think that, maintaining the confidentiality of the source is important. But my point was that if there were substance to this, that would not matter. Like if this were a corroborated report, then the confidentiality of the source would be a second criteria here. If Biden's taken millions of dollars in a quid pro quo with foreign government, it's like, we probably need to know about that. And that's going to make, that's going to come out. But that is, as you say, like demonstrably, or at least explicitly, so far as the folks that have seen this, that's not what we're looking at here. What we're looking at is someone that did their job to report a concern that they had, and apparently that went to the FBI, which is currently being fronted by someone who is deeply sympathetic, we would imagine, to the president that put him into that position, and he found it to be totally not worth pursuing. There's nothing there. And they can say that this is because there's like a deep state cabal. But that really, the burden then is on them to produce that. And that's what I mean when I say it kind of sounds a lot like Benghazi. There were a lot of instances where they weren't able to corroborate the things that they were saying, and they had to complain that the whole system was against them, as opposed to having other ways to produce the truth. And especially when it comes to stuff like this, one of the other things that I will say is that if you have, major levels of corruption like this, there's typically more than one source point to this material. And I don't know, what the FBI does at their investigation. That's way outside of my, expertise. But one thing I will say is that if you get a whistleblower report like this, you are immediately going to try to corroborate it with as many different sources as possible. And I would imagine there's multiple sources that they can go to do this. And if all of those sources come up empty, and all you have left is a single report that says, apparently I heard from someone who heard from a guy who knows somebody, that's not enough. You can't do that. And there's really no argument in any, rational sense that this is a deep state cabal. It's just a lack of meaningful evidence. We don't have the backing for the warrant, and so we can't be persuaded by the argument unless the agenda is Biden is bad, always bad, no matter what, he's bad.
Now, here's this is a pretty recent, maybe even just before we started recording, that shows that Comer's probably backing down. It says, late Wednesday, the FBI made an offer to let the full committee review the FD 1023, a deal McCarthy suggested Comer should take. He needs to show it to every Republican and every Democrat on the committee if he's willing to do that, as opposed to, turning over the document for them so that it could be leaked. So basically, they can all read it instead of just whoever was present at the other meeting. Probably Ray would agree to that as long as they don't have the actual document going out, and that basically then there would be a contempt vote if Ray doesn't agree to that. I'm not sure why Ray would disagree with that. It's practically what happened anyway. But we'll see. I don't know. Maybe there's dynamics that I don't know about.
Yeah, that would be interesting. Part of me feels like that would allow them to kind of elongate this. As long as they're investigating Hillary Clinton, they can say they're investigating Hillary Clinton. And as long as they're investigating Joe Biden, they can say they're investigating Joe Biden. And as we've seen, that investigation doesn't have to yield squat. It's just the act of saying that this is what we are doing that is the kind of virtue signaling that they're after, to say that this is what we do. And I think that the real concern to me genuinely is that you can have someone that Trump appointed to be the lead of the FBI, and if that person doesn't do like the things that they want them to do, then they'll take these extreme rhetorical steps, at least like coming out and saying that they're going to hold the director of the FBI in contempt. Like that's a major move that may not ever materialize, but the message is loud and clear. It doesn't matter who appointed you or where you sit in the rule of law and order in our government. If you don't do the things we want and you're against the party of Trumpism, then there are consequences for that.
Again, it's very tricky because there tend to be leaks of these documents, and if this is a confidential source that's been reliable in the past, that source could be rendered useless in the future, and this is it's potentially a Ukrainian source, right? That is so. Ray may be in a tough spot here. It's kind of interesting that the FBI has a foreign source. It's like how, why is this not a CIA operation? But I don't know. I always consider FBI to be domestic. Why is CIA even dealing or FBI even dealing with this question? But you never know what it's about. But it does look like desperation on this. They are desperate to find something on it. I mean, this goes back to Trump, with conditioning aid on them finding some dirt on Biden, and they're looking for it, and the laptop. They're desperate to find something. I think if they had anything here, they would have had it by now, and they would be in full swing with the hearings. They've been in power now for what, 5 months, and they still really have nothing. They keep promising it, right? It's but there's no, there have been a couple of impeachment articles and anything, but there's nothing concrete. There's no even theory as to what they would charge Biden with it. They keep talking about, well, Biden must have been the big guy who's mentioned in the Chinese email and the rest, but it's not going anywhere. Maybe they're saving it to later in the election, but I don't think so. The Democrats would be privy to the same information and they'd be prompting it. So this is just, again, reeks of desperation. Going back to the first topic of Trump, they need something. They need something to counterbalance that, especially if Trump is going to be their candidate.
I think that's a big part of it. One of the things that they count on is Americans not knowing the difference. If one president is under investigation and the other former president is under investigation, they're all under investigation, and politicians are all the same, and it's all corrupt, and there's no difference. But literally, you just have to go 2 or 3 turns into this one to see the difference. As you said, like with Donald Trump and Ukraine, there were literal phone calls. It was a perfect phone call, we have been told. Like, we have the phone call. These folks have no phone calls. They didn't have one for Clinton. They don't have one for Biden. With the Ukraine situation, there were whistleblowers. There were multiple whistleblowers who came forward and said, this is what our concern is that we're withholding ammunition and arms sales, which is, terrible if you're Boeing and Lockheed, to an ally. And, we were able to corroborate as much as we could. And even then, that wasn't enough for a lot of people, especially on the right, to say that this is what Donald Trump was doing. And for that exact same party that saw all of those developments unfold in the limelight, to then turn around and say, trust us, there's a real gotcha moment coming, and to have absolutely nothing that they can leak or release to the public to substantiate this, I think it really undercuts that credibility. And I do think that there's an exhaustion that we're seeing with the MAGA crowd that we saw with the Tea Party, if you remember. The Tea Party had its moment. It had a really large, influential moment. And then they realized that Tea Party politics basically gets us nowhere. They didn't accomplish any major policy wins or anything like that. And then they just got steamrolled by Barack Obama and the Democrats. And I feel like this is just a much more extravagant version of that. And, I don't know that it's going to go away anytime soon. But one thing that I do see is just more of this futility. It really, there's an old political cartoon of a saw coming up under Barack Obama. They're trying to cut the floor out of him, but they're cutting the circle the wrong way. So he's looking at the hole over there and it has nothing to do with him. This feels kind of like that with Joe Biden. There's just nothing there.
I mean, what they keep saying, what I keep hearing again on the internet is, well, Biden didn't fire Ray. Why is that? I mean, it's just.
Oh my gosh, that's such an amazing argument. You are 2 turns behind in that circumstance. Again, old debate coach here. And I'm just saying, if you're like, Biden didn't fire the guy that our guy appointed, your guy appointed him, there is absolutely no evidence. All you have is Biden didn't fire him. There's nothing there.
Yeah. And again, I don't see the courts going anywhere with this. I think I really want to emphasize that they can do their contempt vote, but I really don't see the courts backing Congress on this. And
it would be alarming if they did.
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, there might be, sure, if they get the right judge on the lower one, but I really doubt even this Supreme Court would allow that to happen.
I worry about the courts these days. I really do.
I do too, but I think, I mean, Kavanaugh is a prime a-hole, but I don't think he would let this happen, and I don't think Roberts would let it happen. The other 3, I don't know, but I think that they would understand that the precedent would be really bad. When they keep talking about it, I keep hearing right wingers say defund the FBI. I almost kind of root for them. Yeah, go do it. I want to see what happens there. I mean, it's just go for it. I wish you had that movement 50 years ago when Hoover was running it, right? Defund COINTELPRO. But it's I find myself in this weird position. I mean, should I be rooting for the FBI? Should I be rooting for Trump-appointed Wray? It's a really bizarre kind of situation to be in. There's probably plenty of stuff going on in the FBI that I would just find appalling. So I don't want to make him out to be a hero, but like I said, it's kind of interesting. I'd be kind of curious as to what is in this document. I'm actually kind of curious myself as to what it refers to, but we're probably never going to know.
I think, as far as I'm concerned, I have this like weird, naive belief that justice should exist and laws should be followed. And if that's something we want to believe in, then the FBI and the CIA and really any policing institution is not the arbiter that we want to turn to as far as the evidence is concerned. That may be a bombshell. But one thing I will say is in this particular instance, this one instance, I feel very confident that the FBI is doing the right thing. It's this, and it is. It's funny because a lot of liberals find themselves defending institutions that we never would have defended, because we used to be the people that were critical of power, and all of a sudden the right is trying to flank us on this. They're trying to be like, the whole system's broken. We want to burn the whole thing down. That doesn't mean we have to like blindly follow the institutions. I still think the best criticisms come from the left. The best critiques of the corruption that exists within the FBI, the best critiques of all of the ways that they, abuse their power and things like that. Those exist and they're out there and they're documented and they're not coming from the right. And I would say that the one thing I'd note is that the left does this to itself too. Like Barack Obama was famously called the deporter in chief, and It was not Republicans calling him that. That was the left that was calling him that. So if we want to critique the FBI, I am all for it. There is so much so much information out there and so many resources we can turn to. It's not Jim Jordan. He's not the person I'm turning to do this.
No, to point out, Obama actually deported more people per year than Trump did. Probably
because put record troops on the border. Yep.
Yeah, probably because they were more competent. But we'll see what happens with this contempt vote, and we'll be talking about it in the future.
Eeny, meeny, chili beany, the spirits are about to speak.
Are they friendly spirits?
Friendly? Just listen.
This brings us to our predictions. Aaron, what have you got for us?
So I'm actually kind of excited about this one, and I really hope I'm wrong. Every now and then I get this little premonition I call coach sense, where I look at all the arguments that are existing and I try to imagine something the other side would say before they say it. And it's been a little over a year since Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson was confirmed to the United States Supreme Court. And so far, there's been absolutely no offense from the right to get her off of the Supreme Court. And part of me thinks that all of this credibility of the Supreme Court, in particular the stuff dealing with Clarence Thomas, is going to prompt a major effort by the right to try to frame her as somehow biased, as somehow unethical, as somehow doing all of the things that we all see in broad daylight Justice Clarence Thomas doing. They're going to try to use all of that vocabulary against her. And I don't know that it's going to matter with a Democrat in the White House, but if they start laying the seeds now, it's the kind of thing that could result in a major move later. I don't know that it's the best prediction in the world, but I just got hit with it the other day and it feels right. So I want to say it here. So if it happens, I can come back and gloat. What do you got, Eric?
Well, real quick update. The House has called off all votes for the rest of the week. Yes, but as for my prediction, 2 airplanes of immigrants have been flown into Sacramento from Florida. They've been pulling this with other states. They finally got around to doing this with California. We've discussed this. This is part of stunts pulled by the administrations involving Abbott and DeSantis. Well, the California California Attorney General Rob Bonta is actually going to conduct an investigation. Newsom himself is making comments that we are going to conduct a criminal investigation on this. I'm making a bold prediction here because I don't think that they should have messed around with Newsom. I'm not always a fan of Newsom, but I'm making a prediction that they're actually going to file some charges in this. This was the wrong time and the wrong place for them to push this.
It is it's an inhumane stunt, and there has to be accountability for it. I really hope you're right.
Well, we'll see. Until next time, stay informed and stay engaged.